This is Paige, the co-host of Giggly Squad, and I want to tell you about a company that I've been loving, Olive and June. Olive and June gives you everything that you need for a salon-quality manicure in one box. And if you break it down, it really comes out to $2 a manicure, which is absolutely insane. It's also so easy to get salon-worthy nails at home with Olive and June. The difference between how your nails used to look when you did them yourself and now with the Mani system is a complete game changer. The best thing about Olive and June, too, is it's a quick dry. Dries in about 1 minute, lasts for 5 days, and full coverage in up to 1 to 2 coats. Visit oliveandjune.com/perfectmani20 for 20% off your first system. That's oliveandjune.com/perfectmani20 for 20% off your first system.
Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. I'm proud to offer premium wireless for just $15 a month. And I'm proud that we have thousands of 5-star reviews from customers like Dan D. in New York, who writes, "I am satisfied customer. How can this only be $15? He wrote it in all caps. I needed you to feel it like he feels it. I hope I did that justice, Dan. And I hope that you try Mint too at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3 months required. New subscribers only. Renew for 12 months to lock in savings. Additional taxes, fees, and restrictions apply. See mintmobile.com.
Hello guys, welcome to this week's episode of Heavy Metal Tones with me, your podcast host, Tony Evans. I hope you've had a good week, a positive week, and are doing well. Always well in Shay Evans' household here, which is good. Had to take little cat to the vet this morning, little Phoebes, to have her injections she gets every 3 months. It's always traumatic, but you know, when you come home and she is sleeping in the basket, you can just put some heavy metal on and away you go. All is well in the world. So, this week's episode is a little bit different to normal. I'm not doing an album review this week. I'm going to do, as you can see in the description, if you clicked on it, it's called Shuffle Madness. Okay, I was having a conversation with a work colleague about how our bands spend a lot of time working out the running order of their albums, and it used to be a bit of an art form, and she was saying that she doesn't listen to albums anymore, just singles or single tracks off albums on Spotify and iTunes and all those sort of places like we do. And it got to me to thinking, how would I feel if I shuffled an album that I know, almost in my sleep, the running order, okay? And it's interesting. This is a very interesting so what's the right word? It's just a very interesting experiment. That's probably the right word. Hang on. Because age groups. Because when I put up on the post that I was going to do this, my younger listeners were like, particularly Benji, is like, that's all I do. I just shuffle the albums. I don't listen to them in order. And then I've got friends of mine that are older, like Millsy and John, and they're like, oh, no, it's sacrilegious. It's sacrilege to do that. And I'm sort of on the older person's, being an older person, I'm sort of sitting on the older person's side of the fence, other than the younger person's side. And I thought, okay, I'll dive into this a little bit. And I watched... because I wanted to know where this would happen. Of course, if you think about it, we've all done it at one time or another, because we've made mixtapes for significant others, right? For girlfriends, boyfriends, whatever. We've made mixtapes. In the old days, you would, and this is, for my younger listeners, this is something that we used to do before you could just rip and burn a CD. You get a blank C60 or C90, if you really love them, a C120. 60 and 90 and 120 is the running times, how many minutes on a cassette. And you would sit there in front of your record deck or your tape to tape, and you would record and press play and press record at the same time, and you had to be there with it, and you had to stop it and pause it to put the next single on, or another from the album. And in theory, sometimes you would have a couple of albums off the same record, and so we sort of were mucking around with lineups, sort of running orders, sort of, not a whole album, but we were doing it, so it's something we used to do. And I found a documentary on the History Channel called The MP3 and the Death of Music, which is really interesting. Okay, it was basically about how the MP3 was invented in 82, then sort of took off in about 86, and then Napster comes in, and the Metallica sue Napster, and eventually they bring Napster down, but there are tenfold copy sites, peer-to-peer, like Shazam and Kazaa and all these sort of, LimeWire, and I never used them. I think I maybe used LimeWire once, and I felt really dirty, so I stopped using it. I literally couldn't do it. Couldn't bring myself to do it. I worked with a guy that would never buy music, and he's a musician. He would never buy music because he said, "Why would I need to do it? These guys are millionaires," and it just used to make me very, very angry. Of course, you can scream at millennials, and they're not necessarily going to listen to you. Anyway, I mean, I'm not going to tar all millennials with the same brush, because they're not all the same. But there was a certain type, who just want everything for free, which makes no sense to me, Anyway, that's a different story. But so, watching this documentary, and it was very good because it became very much in line with what I'm about to talk to you about. So, Apple Music come along, and Steve Jobs took Sony Music and all the big labels into a room and sat down for 2 hours with them and showed them iTunes, then explained to them that they were going to sell each track off every album for $1 each. So you could buy the album, or you could buy any track off the album for that $1. And there was a lot of uproar and outrage, because you bought albums. You bought albums as a package, right? And so you say, and the example they give was Vanilla Ice. So most of us can probably only name one Vanilla Ice song, and that because whoever bought that album, God forbid someone did, I mean, it sold $170 million worth of units in the album units alone, just to get the single off the album. If as soon as you say, oh well, you can just buy the single off the album for $1 on our website, albums would crash, right, and just fall apart. You just can buy the single. Now, I got to thinking last night, does this alter the way that bands put their tracks on albums? Does it matter anymore? And because if people are consuming music digitally 90% of the time now, would it not be the case that why would you sit down as a band and spend hours and hours working out which one went on next, which goes before, when some hairy hipster doofus is just going to sit there and, just either press shuffle or just pick one song and, in different orders. I mean, I know you're looking at me rolling your eyes and go, but on a CD you can skip to a different track, or on a record you can put on a different groove, or tape you can fast forward it. You can do that, but it takes effort, and sometimes you just go, I'll listen to what it is. Now I know on CDs there was a shuffle option. Very rarely did anyone use it though. I don't think, well, not in my memory anyway. So does it make a difference? Would a band, think differently? And I choose to think that if you have an ounce or modicum of self-belief and understanding, that you wouldn't care. You would still put it out in the way you want to put it out, because you need to show the world. The world needs to hear your story and your sound, right? It needs to hear the way you want it to be released. A good example of this is Marillion's, makes me think about this all the time, is Marillion's brilliant second to last album, Clutching at Straws, second to last with Fish, I should say. I think they're sort of dark masterwork, and I know that album inside and out. Okay, I know it word for word, beat for beat, note for note. Now, good friend John, who I mentioned before on the podcast, John, he came to Marillion a bit later in life, a couple of years ago, and he's listening to Clutching at Straws. Now, this is the one problem I have with this little how do I say it, this little challenge I put out to the world, that shuffle an album you know, because most albums on streaming platforms now are extended remasters. You can very hardly find an original print, because you put on an extended one, press shuffle, and suddenly you've got a demo come up that you'd never heard before, or a live track that wasn't there before, and it sort of defeats the object of what I was asking us to do. So anyway, back to John. So there's a particular track that comes in at around about 6, I think, in the middle of the album, that was a B-side to the single Incommunicado, which is Going Under. And I absolutely, viscerally hate that song. I don't know what it is. I love all Marillion, but that, well, when I say all Marillion, I love all Fish era Marillion. It hurts. It's the wrong part of the album. It's what's it doing there. Obviously, when they remastered it and reissued it, the band must have wanted it originally, but with the limitation on what you can get on a CD, running times, and so on, they took it out. It's so, for me, orally disjoining. I have to skip it. Or in fact, I have known to delete it off the track off the download that from Spotify, if I listen to it on Spotify. So, you know, it's interesting to think that bands out there, you know, that was their vision. They wanted that vision, but because I was so used to, you know, spent my misforgotten youth, you know, trundling around the back streets of North London listening to Clutching at Straws on my brother's second-hand Sony Walkman, really with a broken, I remember we had a broken ear. I only had got one ear was coming through on the right side, which is okay, because it comes through the left side, I can't hear a bloody thing on it properly anyway, because my hearing's getting naffed in my left ear. Always has been from early on as a child, actually. But so, you know, it sort of, it hurt a little bit. So I was wondering, so I was a bit concerned how I was going to go forward listening to these 3 albums I set myself. I hope you've got 3 albums and you've done it. I'm interested to hear what you say. I mean, I talked to Benji last night over drinks, and it never bothers him. He just shuffles everything, and it doesn't really matter. I suppose it would matter if, like me, sorry, you hear the bikes in the background. It would be like if it was like me, who does listen to a lot of conceptual albums, and that's a bit of a giveaway for the second part of the show. It can be very disjointed, I suppose. But then also, I did challenge myself with albums that were not conceptual to see if I would find it interesting or not. Anyway, so 3 albums. The 3 albums I've chosen are Iron Maiden's Power Slave, Marillion's Misplaced Childhood, and Killing Joke's, you know, first album, Killing Joke. And I got some really interesting. I had to do it. See, to do this, I think to get anything out of this little experiment, you have to do it more than once for each album, because you want to see, does the shuffle change if I shuffled it a couple of times. So it was really nice. I got to listen to 3 of my favourite albums in all the world, shuffled a few times, and so I got to spend time with it more than I normally would, and I don't normally give it these time. I don't have the time these days, these particular albums, so it was really good to do. I know that with Iron Maiden, their running order is always relatively the same. You have an epic opener, some, you know, heroics in the middle, and a really big epic ending. Marillion, because Misplaced Child is a concept album. Interesting, when I first saw Fish, he played maybe the first side of the album Misplaced Childhood when I was a teenager, and I remember him saying in an interview that he'd had a new album out which was Misplaced Childhood, and it had 2 tracks, and I was like, well, what's this? And he goes, side 1 and side 2. So you can imagine how difficult it is to shuffle that one, right? Killing Joke again, also being like the sort of pioneering industrial post-punk monsters that they are. That album as well is another interesting one. It's not a concept album, but I know it so well that it was a really weird outcome for me. And again, we'll go over that when we get to the side. I'm just having some more tea, sorry guys. But before we move on, I just thought, I've decided to embrace the modern world, people. I've gone into TikTok. I didn't want to go down TikTok route. I don't watch TikToks. So I'm not interested in looking at them, but I'm using them to promote the show. So, if listeners want to jump on and just like, if you're on TikTok and just like it, I'm going to try and do sort of once a week, maybe twice a week, recording day, post-recording day, or things that pop up. It's just a little bit. I can barely understand Instagram. I'm all right with Facebook, sort of get my head around that a bit. But yeah, if you want to jump on, like it, lots of likes, it might help. It might help spread the word of the show. You might even see my lovely face every now and again, if you were lucky. I'm also in line to interview Devon Townsend soon, which will be interesting. Heavy Devi, he's a crazy dude. A bit nervous about that. I'm always nervous, but I think it will be pretty interesting stuff. We're coming into a heavy period of concerts all coming up. They're all starting to clag together. I haven't been home for the last week and a bit with all stuff going on, so I won't talk about it now, but we'll leave that for some future shows. But our next one coming up, I think, is Skeletal Remains, the US band. They're going to play at the Basement in November. Oh no, sorry. Week after next, we've got the brilliant Sydney thrash band. Flaming Wreckage. They're great guys, great artwork, really fun music. I'll be talking about those. So I might even do a band review and a quick sort of Sydney side thrash scene deep dive as well. That might be fun. Anyway, I'm about to go and warm my tea up. Slightly shorter episode this week because sorry, I'm so tired. I had so much on, and this morning with little Phoebe, she just very stressed, and I'm a little bit tired. So we might squeeze this a little bit. So I don't know. The second half might go on. I might end up. Who knows what's going to happen? And in a few minutes when I sit back down with my tea. But I'm about to go and do that now. So I'll talk to you on the other side, guys. Enjoy the adverts. Bye for now. Welcome back, guys. Fresh tea, fresh mind, might go a bit longer. Sorry about that. I don't mean to bring the vibe down at the end of the episode there. So, as I mentioned before, it's just shuffle, okay? Look, I said at the beginning of the show, and I stand by it, I really can't stand it. I can't. It's like, for me, it's like reading the back of the book, the middle of the book, and then the end of the book. It's like me looking at your end of your comic to see if Superman wins or not. It's like fast-forwarding the end of knowing the punchline before you've heard the joke. Whatever way you want to wrap it in, whatever, sort of fancy imagery, it's all the same. I think if I was to write an album and I wrote, as a band, we wrote 12 songs. We spent ages whittling down the songs, and then I found out someone had just gone shuffle. Well, I don't know. Look, I mean, is it good, guys? I mean, you tell me. I mean, is it a positive thing? Are people consuming their music in a way that they like to hear it? So they're creating the sound they want to hear, or should they be dictated by the bands, the record companies, and that we should remove the shuffle option? I reckon, you know what? If I was good enough to have an album released on Spotify, and I would go to Spotify, and I was a big band, I'd say, could you disable shuffle for my album, please? I wonder if you could do that. That'd be pretty fascinating, wouldn't it? Imagine sort of like Iron Maiden going, look, guys, I don't want this album shuffled. This is too important. It has to be played the way it is. I don't know. I sort of makes me feel a bit old when I feel a bit old sometimes when I say that I think it. We shouldn't. Sorry, I was miles away from the mic then, so I've changed the sound. I don't know whether it makes me feel old or I feel old by saying it. Of course, I am older, but I don't. And there are probably young people out there that feel the same way. But I think because I'm such a audio person, I hate the word audiophile because it just makes me sound like old men in rooms with big beards and thick rimmed glasses and talking about where to stand in your room to get the best sound. I mean, it's just I don't want to be that person. But I do understand that person, right? Because a bit of me in my soul is that person. But also I want to partake and enjoy the music the way I do. I think if I was to shuffle an album intensely now, it would be to make a mixtape again. It's probably the only time I'd do it. But so 3 albums I chose. I already mentioned before. The first one was Misplaced Childhood by Marillion. So 1985, Misplaced Childhood's seminal and greatest. It's probably the greatest. It is the greatest neo-progressive rock album of all of them. And then that's a big mouthful of wankiness, but it means that it's a modern progressive album that's not made between 1972 and 1974. 76. Sorry. It's a modern 80s prog album that isn't made by the old dinosaurs, that people think they were, and it is a single piece of music that does float from A to B. It did have several singles off of it. It had, Kaylee, Lavender, Heart of Midlothian. It had those singles, but doesn't mean that it's a singles album. I don't really know how they managed to chop those songs out to make singles. Sort of with Kaylee, I can see it. They got to number 2 in the charts. The album got to number 1. Lavender, again, you can sort of, because it's based on a nursery rhyme, you can sort of make it a single. Heart of Midlothian was, again, sort of single-ish, but I put the shuffle on. I see, and it didn't start where it's meant to start, with this sort of wondrous sort of tom rolling floor toms, atmosphere, and it in Pseudo Silk Kimono, it sort of just comes straight into Windswept Thumb Espresso Bongo, which is like part of a little suite in the middle, and it was quite jarring. I mean, I have to say, it was so jarring that I was on the way to work. I thought I'd listen to it on the bus on the way to work. I'm forced to listen to it in that spot now. Here we go. And I really, to say that I had a physical reaction to it is an understatement. I felt really uneasy. My hackles went up, my skin felt. I couldn't get it. And I had to, and I'm sorry, I'm going to say this, I had to press the shuffle button. I had to move it on because it was just didn't work. It was just really strange. And however way I twisted that album, however way I pumped it out, it all came out the same way. Nothing really felt correct, because the music's designed to flow, even though it's cut into tracks, because of the iTunes phenomena, which is what it is. Although, yeah, it is the iTunes phenomena, because on a record, you wouldn't choose to move that record. The track would just let it flow through, but on, it's digital, you can just move it around. And I had to try, and it took me about 4 attempts to get the album to flow for me. And I wrote the. Now, I don't know if any of you are Marillion fans. You probably are not. Some of you might be. I will tell you the let me just turn the volume down because I need my phone, because I make notes on my phone. I'll tell you the lineup, the set line that I got, that I felt the most happiest with. Okay. Again, this is the 2017 remaster. I was going to do it with the last year's or the year before's reissue, but I'm going to go with the 2017 remaster because it's got the live stuff on it. But so the original set lineup, running order, is Pseudo Silk Kimono, Kaylee, Lavender, Bittersweet, Brief Encounter on Last Weekend, Heart of Lothian, Waterhole, Espresso Bongo, Lords of the Backstage, Blind Curve, Childhood's End, White Feather, right? And I found that I could basically cope if the 2 singles came through first, which was Kaylee and Lavender, then followed by Waterhole, Lords of the Backstage, Pseudo Silk Kimono. That was jarring because it's really hard because it's the beginning of this album. Blind Curve, Childhood's End, Bittersweet, and then I could really only manage to enjoy it if I managed to get the rhythm to end where it finally finished on White Feather. The story, I mean, those who don't know the album, it's basically about a young man's desperate attempt to rediscover his childhood through lost love and poetry and music. Okay, and it's very lyrical. It's very thick with has a viscosity to it. It's very thick with texture and musical interludes. So it's very difficult to break up. So that's the only way I could get that to work. And I think what you should do if you're going to try this is at home, if you haven't done this yet, is get an album that does act like... We all have albums in our collection or in our consciousness that you can't play out of order. I did think of doing Jeff Wayne's War of the Worlds. That one would be very odd. I think that probably, because it's a story, that's an obvious story, could be really difficult. I was going to do A Lamb Lies Down on Broadway, the greatest progressive rock album ever made. But that one, again, because it's a double album, that's a lot of tracks to shuffle. And I don't know. And I'm sorry, guys, I love you, all of you dearly, but I don't think I could ruin that a precious an album for me. And it sort of did at Misplaced Childhood to some extent, sort of not ruined it, but it put me off listening to it. So there's a good obvious sign there of how a shuffle can not work on certain pieces of music. I'm sure that classical music albums that are broken up into suites and so on would also be the case. I have a friend, Jeff, who is a composer. He listens to the show now and again. He writes beautiful pieces of music. I'm sure if I press shuffle on his, it would just end up being... It'd lose its direction and I know I hear you screaming, but it's pop music and rock music, it doesn't need direction. But it does, doesn't it? It does. You don't eat well, you might not. I don't eat my pudding, then my soup, and then some bread, and then my mains, and you know I try to follow things texturally and with flavour to layer. That's why you have an aperitif and then a good glass of wine, and you follow wines with food if you want to do that kind of thing. There's a reason you do it, and I'm feeling that's the same with some of this stuff. Really, shuffling is almost like the the modern audio fast food society. It's sort of not bothered with the content, just with the outcome. If you know what I mean. Does that make sense without me sounding old? So that doesn't work. So I decided that progressive rock albums cannot be shuffled. They cannot be shuffled. It is just, particularly as they are mainly long, sometimes overblown, but long pieces of audio and storytelling that needs to be in the way it was written, because the band wants to tell you the story that's coming on. Second one that I did was Iron Maiden's Power Slave. Now, I really wanted to find an album that I probably could listen to in any order. I thought I needed to find an album that if I shuffled it, I'd get the outcome I want, right? Or an outcome that would not change the way I think about the album. Now, I chose the 2015 remaster. Not that it makes any difference to the lineup. There is a few extra things that, like, it's mainly the sound. It's the closest I could get without all the extras on, without all the lives and the, they have to give you 9 hours of content because you want more and more for your money. This is the 1984 Maiden album. Those that don't know it, it's my not my favorite. My favorite Maiden album is actually Peace of Mind. I chickened out slightly not doing Peace of Mind again. It was sort of like, even though I love Power Slave to bits, Power Slave has more anthemic moments that live. When you listen to the album, how it goes from one to the other. So the opening for Power Slave, the album lineup running time is, you have Aces High, 2 Minutes to Midnight, Lost for Words, that's the Big Aura, that's the God, I've gone blank, you know what I mean? It's got no words in it, you know what I mean? Instrumental. Flash of the Blade, The Duelist, Back in the Village, Power Slave, Rime with the Ancient Mariner. Now, you know how I feel about Rime with the Ancient Mariner, the greatest heavy metal song ever made. It ends on a titan of the genre of the... I don't know whether Iron Maiden were Nawabum by the time Power Slave came along. I think they had engulfed and surpassed the subgenre that they helped create at this particular point. I think at this point they were Iron Maiden and they were just heavy metal, but they weren't Nawabum. That's new wave of British heavy metal for you to first time listeners. So I hit the shuffle, and what did I get? I'll tell you. Let me just turn my volume down because I kept the shuffle list. Okay, I got Flash of the Blade first. All right, which is good. It's a fast opening track. It's a lot of pace. It opened any other album, you'd be okay. Oh god, that's really pretty okay. But when you think about how Aces High is such a brilliant opening song, because you've got two tracks, one after the other, Aces High and 2 Minutes to Midnight, both all war themed, fighter pilots, and it's fast, it's aggressive, and the drum roll that you get through with the Nico that rolls out at the beginning, and then of course into your classic sing along 2 Minutes to Midnight. It feels like sinful to shuffle this particular song, but I did it, and I thought, okay, let's go. Then I got The Duelist. Not my favourite song on the album, by no means. Of course, it is very much a Bruce song, being him and his love for sword fighting and epées and all that sort of stuff. I fencing's the right word. I was like, okay, if this was if I'd bought this album, this is how the running time, how it run, I'd be like, I don't know if it's as good as it was. And then Power Slave comes in at 3. Now, if you think about how Power Slave is usually just before Rhyme of the Ancient Mariner, right? And the reason that Power Slave is so good the way it is it's so epic, and you think, how more epic can I get? And then suddenly, bang, you're in Rhyme of the Ancient Mariner, right? So it sort of feels disjointed in that respect. And then we go Lost for Words. Lost for Words is a typical Maiden trope. They need to film an album, got some music, don't have a lyric, something we can just I think Steve said, let's just open up our shoulders and our loosen our fingers off, and just have a nice bit of a gallop without having to worry about covering it with a lyric. Maybe also a time in the set for Bruce to do a costume change. Who knows? And then we have Rhyme of the Ancient Mariner. Now, Rhyme of the Ancient Mariner should end the album. I shuffled this 3 times. Twice I got Rhyme of the Ancient Mariner as the opening track. It is impossible to open an album with an album track like Rhyme of the Ancient Mariner, because where do you go from there? It is impossible. It has to end the album. It's got to be at the end. It's got to be so you're taken to a crescendo, almost orgasmic sort of point, that point of no return, and then bash, and you're over and done with, and you're lying there lighting a cigarette or rolling over and looking for your underpants, whatever. That's the moment, right? That's the moment. And to open it, you all your energy is sucked out of you. All your physical viscera is gone, and you've got nothing left. You can't open that particular track. And then 2 minutes to midnight. Now, I don't mind. In fact, it was one of the things I quite liked. I didn't mind 2 minutes to midnight after Rhyme, if you're going to do it. I would have preferred it before Rhyme, but as I said, nothing really, apart from Power Slave, nothing really works. You need an epic before an epic. It's like a pseudo epic into a major epic, really. It's like, I don't know, it's like reading a forward to a short story by written by Dickens, and then the actual novel itself is written by James Joyce or something like, one of those weird, like, something, I mean, they're different timelines, but you know what I mean, right? And I think that's it, isn't it? Let me just check. No, Back in the Village. And then it ends on Aces High. Back in the Village is great. It's a great sing-along song, right? They're all good sing-along songs, and it's got that sort of really fast pace to it. You sort of want it to... The thing about this album is there's no real moments where you rest. The only time you really rest is Lost for Words. And then it ends with Aces High. I mean, brilliant. If you didn't have Rhyme of the Ancient Mariner, starting this album with 2 minutes to midnight and ending with Aces High, wow, you'd still have a solid gold classic. But it didn't work. It took ages to get a shuffle that I liked. That was as best as I could get. The worst, as I said, was opening Rhyme of the Ancient Mariner. Just crazy, crazy, crazy. Sorry, guys, some more tea. So, I mean, I'm sort of interested to see how you guys feel about this. It's, again, an album that's sort of very, 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 very important to me and to a lot of people. And I don't know, and to the band, I'd say as well. It'd be interesting to see what bands think. I mean, technically, when they play an album live, they don't play it in running order, do they? They'll play it out. If they're doing the whole album for the show, it's shuffled between other songs. But you wouldn't start, like Maiden wouldn't come on and start the set with Rhyme of the Ancient Mariner, because they'd be pardon my French, they'd be fucked by the end of it, wouldn't they? I mean, it's a lot of energy, 13 and a half minutes, whatever it is, long, and and it's epic. You'd want to You want to build your energies in the room and then with the set. And I think that's, again, of course, let's talk about that. Let's, on a nice side note, in a more sort of hippie wanky way, think about the energies of the album. Think about the emotions within each song within the album. If you're a band that writes songs, who have lots of songs that generally sort of have the same kind of theme. I'm thinking of Stephen Wilson, I'm thinking of Dream Theater, I'm thinking of Iron Maiden, I'm also thinking, Slayer and things like that. If you're bands like that, when you write your album, surely each energy from each song sort of feed into the next one. I mean, a good example is the last Venom Inc. album, There's Only Black. I reviewed it, and on reflection, I could have done a better review because I didn't have the lyrics at the time. And I just got a copy of it. I hadn't got a copy yet, but that album is energy after energy after energy, and it's darker and it's darker and it's heavier and it's darker, and it takes you to this sump of this sort of belly of the beast, sort of, and I don't know whether if you were to change the way it run, whether it would be as impactful as it is at the moment. So my third album I chose, Killing Joke's first album from 1982, Killing Joke. If you don't know the band, they are by far one of the most influential bands in the history of music, of modern music. So, and I know people are going to look and rolling their eyes at me and go, "No, but don't you mean Pink Floyd and don't you mean the Beatles?" I don't mean that era. I'm talking about, I'm sort of saying 77 onwards. So from the punk, flames of the punk movement, became a lot of subgenres. And Killing Joke were they were a genre of their own. They embraced dub, they embraced punk, they embraced heavy rock, they embraced a sort of bastardized blues/jazz, orchestral music, electronic music, and they're one of the most amazing bands live ever. You go and see them, and I've seen them several times. You almost feel like you're in a trance. I mean, that sounds wanky, but I have come away from a Killing Joke gig and gone, "What the fuck happened there? Where did 2 hours of my life go?" And it's a wonderful thing. I'm not complaining about that at all. That's just an amazing thing that they do. And their first album, this isn't their first recording release. They released Turn to Red, an EP before then. This is their first album, their first full-length album. And subsequently they've had many albums, and they've influenced many people. Ministry, Nine Inch Nails, Metallica, because they covered The Weight that's on this album. And I've sort of always considered this album as sacrosanct is probably the right word. I was going to do Nevermind the Bollocks by the Sex Pistols, but the way that they make their music is designed to be cut up, thrown away and rolled around, and I don't know whether a shuffle would make me feel any different to the album itself. Anyway, I'll give you the running order of Killing Joke's Killing Joke, if you're interested, so you can do it yourself. Requiem, this is the 2005 remaster, by the way. Requiem, War Dance, Tomorrow's World, Bloodsport, The Weight, Complications, SO36, Primitive, Change. Okay. Now, if any of those that are au fait with this album, and if you're not, put it on and have a listen, because you bloody well do yourself a favour. If you're not au fait with this album, any of those will understand how it ebbs and flows in a way that's unlike any other album. So it's like, you know, you open up with Requiem, and it's this distorted, electronic bastardization of I think it's an E over A. I'm not sure. It's very, very monochrome. It's monochrome. That's what it is. It's monochrome. It's very black and white. It's very stark. Okay. Jazz is vitriolly spitting out the words, and Geordie's one of the greatest guitarists who ever lived. You know, he doesn't play a guitar solo, but my God, he is unbelievably heavy and distorted and beautiful. And then you've got Youth, you know, with his dub reggae beats. He was a friend of Sid Vicious. They were all together, you know. He's one of the most gifted producers in the world. He's worked with the Orb and all that sort of stuff. He's just, you know, amazing as a producer. And then you've got Big Paul Ferguson on the drums, absolutely smacking the shit out of it. And they were known for doing ritualistic rituals, right? Where they would do rituals before shows and during shows, and they would, you know, do incantations, and they're very spiritual people, bringing about. I mean, they at one point thought the end of the world was coming, and they all went to Iceland. And it's in the mid-80s. Anyway, brilliant band. Search them out if you don't know them. Listen to them. Brilliant. The whole catalogue. Brilliant. Okay. So the shuffle I did, I started off with Complications. Now, this album, so this is the winner for me. This is the winner. I didn't think that this monochrome monolith of an album, this giant of atonal, dub-ridden electronic noise, could move in me in any other way than the way it normally does. But this one did. Okay, this one did. It was like, I don't feel like crying. It was like I really mean it, guys. I'm quite teary now thinking about it. Actually, because this Killing Joke came into my life at a time when I was really needed it. So I was like 15, and I was really unhappy with. I mean, just give background. I was unhappy with my family situation. A girlfriend I had was really not working out well. I was about to leave school. I didn't know where I was going. You know, I didn't have a strong enough education behind me. When I think about it, and so I was at a gig. I went to see a band called Ruptured Dog. If you're listening, guys, gotta love you guys. Tony Mame and Doug Dog, and they were a punk band, a 3-piece punk band. And I was talking to one of the guitarist wives, because I did a little bit of help. I did a bit of roadieing for them for a little while as well. But I talked to their wives, and I was saying, oh, you know, I've done it. And she goes, you should listen to Killing Joke. The Killing Joke will that will get you moving. And this is before the internet, of course. So I went home, scrounged a couple of quid from my brother, walked down to the local second-hand record shop and bought this album. In fact, it didn't have a cover at the time. I bought it without a cover, just got the record on its own, the paper sleeve. And to say that it was a moment that will change my life, and I say it a lot, but it really fucking did, guys. It really did. And so putting this album on and again, you know, thinking, and again, I was quite worried. How's this going to turn out? Is it going to ruin it? Am I going to? But I had a semi-religious experience with this thing playing. I shuffled it about 4 or 5 times. This one. Which is no mean feat when you think the album itself runs at 55 minutes. So most of my day was spent listening to this album. And so I went Complications. I'm not going to explain each song on this album because this one's a bit more complicated than I'd like to. It's a whole different album, a different show for this one. But needless to say, there is each particular song can be in any order. I really think so. I thought, how could this album not open with Requiem, which was a single, and then War Dance, which was a single, which is like, War Dance is like Punk's version of War Pigs. I know it's the same word, but I'm not using that. It genuinely is the most recognisable post-punk track of them all, I think. And I thought, how can you not open with Requiem and War Dance? And often I find this album, and to be honest, this is to be truthful, I think that they open with the two strongest tracks that are the most accessible tracks, because whoever's bought the album may have only bought the single War Dance. They don't want to scare them with The Weight or Bloodsport or the amazing bass line in Tomorrow's World, or even the Jazz's plaintive vocal line in Primitive. Certainly not the really obtuse keyboards of Change. I think that's probably why they did it. But now when I'd shuffled it, and I opened with Tomorrow's World, and then I went Primitive. I mean, because I know this album, this didn't affect me. I think if it was just new to it, it would probably affect me. Then I went Change. That's a brilliant piece of dub. Oh my God, I love reggae, by the way, guys. You know that. I actually like a lot of dub as well. And this is like a crossover piece of music that is so intense, okay? And then The Weight. Of course, people know the Metallica's version of The Weight. I know people that didn't know that Metallica wrote The Weight. Thought Metallica wrote The Weight. You can see why Killing Joke were influenced by them. Because I think, even in fact, a lot of the New Album bands were influenced by Killing Joke. They won't admit to it. Sonically they probably were somewhere or another. And then Bloodsport, again, brilliant bass. Youth, Martin Glover, at his best, I reckon, in this track. And to be brutally honest, Big Paul Ferguson, I mean, how he's not put these sticks through the skins on this one, And then Requiem. And I really love Jazz's vocal on Requiem. I had once spent a good afternoon drinking with Jazz Coleman's uncle in Notting Hill one afternoon. A lot of fun. This album, this was the win. This is the win for me, guys. I hope that when you shuffle your 3 albums, if you do 3 albums, you're brave enough. Do one that you feel couldn't be possibly shuffled. Do one that possibly could, and one that you really feel that might benefit. It's difficult to pick, but truly, Killing Jokes. I've written it down in my diary, this particular shuffle lineup, and I'm going to edit it so I can play it that way again in the future, because I won't remember. It was really joyous, really joyous, really opened my eyes, really changed. It was just like seeing. I don't know. It was just weird, and I don't know what it was. Whether it was what I was doing, because at one point I was cooking dinner, and I sort of I thought, hang on, am I getting? Is this what I'm hearing? This, and then I wrote them all down, and I shuffled it, and I didn't quite like it. I shuffled it, and I was like, okay. And I didn't get the alchemy that I got from that first shuffle. But subsequently, it was still beautiful, still interesting. But something about that particular one, it was like they must have been looking down on me and gone, that's the way to go. I remember seeing Judas Priest on their Nostradamus tour, Sydney, at the Ace Arena, and I had made a mixed CD for the car on the way up. That was all like my favourite Priest songs, and it was like Eat Me Alive, Hellbent for Leather, all that stuff. And then I'm not lying, that I said to Dave, I wonder what they're going to play. He said, oh, they'll play this, they'll play that, whatever, right? And they played, before they played the whole of Nostradamus, they played almost track for track my mixtape, my mix CD. And I looked at Dave, I said, if they play Eat Me Alive next, I'm going to freak out. And bugger me, they played Eat Me Alive next. And it was just weird. It was like a psychic moment, right? And that was a great experience as well. But that aside, so what I'm saying is, sometimes when you shuffle these albums, it works. Sometimes it's an abomination unto the Lord. Sometimes it makes no difference whatsoever. It is a generational thing. I think the youngsters wouldn't care because they've been raised with the ability to do so through iTunes and Spotify and CD players. You couldn't do it with a record deck because the effort of moving them around, you just let it play through. To some extent the same with cassettes because there's a lot of effort otherwise, okay? But I do encourage you to see if you have my moment. See if you have my moment of joy, my moment of dread, and see what you get out of it. I'd love to hear what albums you chose and how you felt. Do come and chat with me and message me at Heavy Metal Tones Facebook page. It's just Heavy Metal Tones. You can find me easily. The link will be in my description below. Come and look me, like I said, come and find me on TikTok, and I've only got 2 videos at the moment, but come and like those and see if we can expand our audience a bit more. It's growing hugely in America, which is I'm very thankful for, guys. I really, really am. Nice and steady in Australia. It's growing in Europe, which is really good as well, particularly in the UK, which chuffs me a little bit being an expat. But hey, let's see if we can reach out to more people if you enjoy this old man's ramblings. That's enough for me now for this week. Go off and enjoy your shuffle madness. Keep safe, keep rocking, and we'll chat next week, guys. Bye for now.